This is session 6 on exploratory. The component of exploratory within middle school concept is the one that's the most often misunderstood. And for that reason, I'm dividing it into two approaches. One is within the curriculum and one is outside of the curriculum. That, I think, separates it in a way that we can understand it better. The overriding issue with exploratory is that it's intended to give middle school students a chance to try new things in a non-threatening manner. They're at a time in their lives where they're very aware of what their peers are thinking of them or what they think they're thinking of them, and they're often hesitant to try new things just for the sake of trying them to see if it's something that they would enjoy or something that they might be good at, although that's not the primary purpose. And it should be able to be done in a non-threatening manner. It should be looked at in a way that students feel like that they're taking some risks, but they're positive risks. They're not risks as in destructive kinds of behavior like joining gangs, engaging in alcohol and drug use, that kind of thing. They are trying new things, and that's a good thing to do. And the exploratory program should provide that. Some programs are able to do that better than others. It's difficult to do an exploratory program well, although it can be integrated into whatever else a good middle school team is doing pretty well if the teachers plan well. First, we're going to look at exploratory within the curriculum. And probably the easiest way to do this is as extensions of interdisciplinary units. Oftentimes, once teams of teachers have planned units and they can be very nicely done, very complete, very successful, it's obvious that there are some things that could be springboarded from those units. And sometimes as the unit is going on or after it's completed, a student or a group of students will express an interest in something that truly is an extension of the unit that they're doing as part of the team. So if we go back to our example that we talked about earlier that had to do with a unit about elections, maybe as part of that particular unit, a group of students became very interested in elections that occurred historically and how those were structured and who was involved and all of those kinds of things. It would be very easy to plan a series of activities for that student or group of students that let them or guided them to delve into that further, and that would truly be an extension of the unit that was already done. Sometimes teams of teachers will anticipate that that will happen, and they themselves can see how things could easily be extended or springboarded from the actual unit. And so they might ahead of time plan a series of activities or different categories of activities that are extensions of the units, and then students can later choose from those things as part of their exploratory program. And then under the category of other, because I don't really know what else to call it, but still within the curriculum, schools will often have programs that they might call unified arts or expressive arts or the specials. It's the band, chorus, foreign language, art, all of those things that are part of the curriculum but not part of the core curriculum. And when we think about core curriculum, as you know, we're usually talking about math, science, social studies, language arts. Oftentimes schools will call that collective curriculum, art, music, all those kinds of things, their exploratory program. And technically it doesn't really fit the definition of exploratory only because not everything is open to all students to try. As you know, most often if students choose to be a part of the band, that may very well eliminate the possibility of taking the art classes, and they may be interested in art as well. So in that sense, it's not truly exploratory. However, it's certainly better than nothing. Also, you can individually as a teacher or your team of teachers can plan independent studies or some activities around special interests that a student or students might have, still within the curriculum. So you might plan some things that fit nicely within your district curriculum or the Illinois Learning Standards that are true independent studies, kind of little mini versions of what college students might do, but centered around students' interests. It's a good thing when students are interested in things, and we as teams of teachers should be able to offer them opportunities to explore those interests. Now looking at exploratory outside the curriculum, we are first going to, this looks like a repeat, look at independent learning based on special interests. This is really the same as within the curriculum, same kind of format, except that these particular activities may not be meeting any particular district objectives or goals or curriculum, or may not meet something that's in the Illinois Learning Standards. It's outside of the curriculum, however, it's something that students are still interested in. Now, I know you have to balance how much time you want to spend on that when we're obligated to meet certain state standards and those kinds of things. But we also need to revisit the idea that if students are interested in things, that's a good positive thing, and we should try to provide opportunities for them to explore those. One of the things that schools often will do outside of the curriculum is to plan a series of supplemental mini courses. And they won't do this all year, but oftentimes they'll take 9 weeks, and they will take their exploratory time and do mini courses. They will plan those ahead and offer them, and students will sign up for those. And during a 9-week period, for example, they could sign up for several. They could do three-week mini courses, or 1 2-week one followed by some other ones, or whatever. Sometimes teams of teachers like to have 2 categories of mini courses, one category being more academic in nature and the other being more fun and craft-like in nature, requiring students to choose at least one from the academic category. That's okay. And we'll use some examples here in just a moment. But some things to keep in mind when planning mini courses, and it is a lot of work, there's no doubt about it, but it's also extremely fulfilling and always successful. The length of time you would want to consider. What is a reasonable length of time to run a mini course? Is 2 weeks enough? Is 1 week enough? Should it be longer than that? Teacher strengths. Oftentimes mini courses are centered around teachers' own strengths, interests, or talents. If a teacher, for example, has an expertise in a musical instrument, there's no reason a mini course could not be planned around that, and that teacher could teach that. Or if there's a foreign language that a teacher speaks that is not offered in school, you could do a little mini session on that particular foreign language. Teachers have an abundance of their own talents and strengths, and they could take advantage of those to plan mini courses. Parent involvement should also be considered. This is a great way to bring parents into the school. Parents also have an abundance of talents, and they have hobbies, they have resources, and quite often they're more than happy to share those with students. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, but community resources is kind of the same thing. There are people in the community, business people, who often are willing to come in and help with a mini course, and there are a large group of retired people who are very active, have hobbies, have experiences, have expertise, and oftentimes they're very willing to come and share that as well. Now, looking at both the parents and the community, you can see where the logistics of that could get complicated. It may be, let's say for example, that you have a stockbroker that's willing to come in but not every day for 2 weeks. But he or she is willing to come in 3 days the first week. You could plan your mini session accordingly, knowing that that person's going to be there those 3 days the first week, and he or she will probably be willing to sit down with you to help plan activities that you do as the teacher of that particular mini course for those other days when that person is not there. Same thing with parents who may not be able to come in the whole time. Same thing with a retired person who may not want to or be able to come in every day for 2 weeks. But the community resources and the parents are an untapped resource quite often in these kinds of courses. Let's go back to some examples for just a moment. We talked about maybe categorizing academic mini courses or less academic. A couple of examples of more academic ones might be where one of the mini courses has to do with creating a school newspaper, and the components of a newspaper and the types of writing that's a part of that. And the students that are a part of that mini course actually produce that newspaper. I would consider that a more academic kind of choice for a mini course. Another example would be, and I've seen teams do this one, it's really interesting, where they divide the group that's in the mini course into two teams, and each of these teams kind of create their own culture, and they create documents and artifacts and things that say things about their culture. And then they, in the schoolyard, actually bury their artifacts, and then they reverse their teams and they dig up each other's artifacts. It's an anthropological dig. And then they can draw conclusions about the other culture based on the artifacts that they dug up. That would be a lot of fun, but I would also consider that to be a more academic kind of mini course. On the other side of it, the more fun kinds of stuff, there's a wealth of things. Anything that's craft-like would be a part of that. You know, learning how to knit or crochet, or learning how to do calligraphy, or you know, anything along that line at all would still be acceptable. There's nothing wrong with kids trying new things. It doesn't matter if they're not good at it, and that has to be kind of an overriding issue. What matters is it enjoyable, and is it something that they can have fun with, that they can share with other people? If so, that's a good thing. It doesn't matter if they're not the best person in the world. The best example I have of that is, this has been several years ago, but a student participated in a mini course that had to do with deaf education, which is kind of an interesting one. And as part of it, they visited a school for the deaf. They communicated with kids their own age that were deaf. They learned sign language so they could do some of that basic communication. They learned the history of deaf education, etc. Years later, one of the participants in that mini course actually pursued deaf education in college, and I had a chance to talk with her about that. And I asked her, had she ever imagined that when she participated as a middle schooler in this mini course, if she would end up pursuing that as a career. And she looked a little surprised and said, "Oh, that's why I'm pursuing that. That's what got me interested in it." Now, I am in no way saying that mini courses or exploratory should be career builders. That's not the intent, but that's a really nice story. And the fact that she had the experience available to her is what let her you know, explore that further, and then subsequently make the decision that perhaps she wanted to pursue this as a career. All of us have things that we like to do that we're not particularly good at, and I don't think we would ever want to think that we should be judged based on that. And middle schoolers are much more vulnerable than we are as adults, and so they need to get the message that it's absolutely a good thing to try new things, and that it's absolutely fine if you're not the best at it. And exploratory can provide that for them.